Welcome to Life Science Leaders, a series of webinars and podcasts for leaders within the life science industry. This is our third series, and we're going to be talking about elements of coaching and mentoring for leaders within our industry. I'd like to welcome Jenn Fenwick, CEO of Rebel Coaching, who we'll be speaking with today. Jenn, over to you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for looping me in, Lissa. It's so great to be chatting with you today. So yeah, we whistle stop tour and intro as to who is this Kiwi sitting in Edinburgh, Scotland, talking to you all today. So yeah, I'm Jenn Fenwick. I am a CEO and leadership coach, and I work with leaders across the globe to confidently navigate the challenges of modern day leadership. And I get to do that full time, from Edinburgh, and it's just awesome. But even, coaching for me actually started, at the age of 16. So many moons ago now. Actually, growing up in New Zealand, I played every sport under the sun as a Kiwi kid, and actually first came to coaching age 16, coaching my sister's netball team, which is wild. We're still talking, so I can't have done that better job all those years ago, but actually, so coaching for me has just been a love of mine. Coaching netball teams. I did HR and organisational psychology at uni in New Zealand, and then when I moved over to the UK, I fell into the pharma industry. I think, as many people do, fell into recruitment and HR in pharma. 16 years ago, and we worked together. It's not so. I mean, how long ago was that? My goodness. So I've been coaching. I was doing career coaching. I was then, coaching my own teams. Coaching leaders within, the likes of GSK and Quintiles, and so coaching was always part of, of my day to day. In 2015, I had a bit of a curveball and found out I had breast cancer. And as I'm sure people can appreciate, that just made me stop and think about, following treatment, I've got this awesome second chance to do something really, really cool. And although I was working as a global talent director at the time, but I knew there was something else I needed to be doing, with the second chance. And I just, it was all about coaching, and I was just like, if I could set up a coaching business, how amazing would that be? And here I am. And actually, now I guess the two key areas of where I'm working with people now is actually supporting leaders around things like, the first 90 days and really nailing it in those first months in new leadership roles. And the second kind of area, which I just love, is talking to leaders and working with them to really, own and find and own who they are as leaders. So really, developing that authentic leadership, and really actually stepping into being, role models, which really couldn't be more important than now in this kind of virtual world. So there we go. But we'll whistle stop tour. Here I am.
And it's all senior leaders that you're supporting at the moment, isn't it, Jenn? Or are you supporting a varied group of people in terms of, their leadership?
You know what? I don't limit it. I think I'm trained executive coach. However, for me, I just think that that all leaders can benefit from from leadership coaching. So so I've actually worked with first time leaders all the way through to like first time CEOs. And the cool thing, I think in these modern days when there's just it's pretty heavy and pretty overwhelming and challenging for leaders of all levels. I see coaching as like strategic headspace. So my role as coach is to pull leaders out of the busy day to day, just to get clear on their priorities and and just help them navigate whatever's going on. And that's for whatever level of leader.
And although we met in the pharmaceutical industry, life science industry, you don't just support our industry now, do you? You support some other industries as well.
Yeah, so pharma, kind of biotech, life sciences will always be a love of mine. It's where my network is, and so I do a lot of work there. However, over the last kind of few years, I've been also working with tech companies, which is really, really cool.
Yeah,
Fast growing, leaders are often progressing quite, rapidly into different roles. They can often find that they're quite young, managing, they might be, a CTO, and they're relatively young and don't necessarily know who they are as a leader. And I just love that. Really, really love that. So.
And are you working on a global platform, or is it predominantly more Europe, UK?
Oh, I think this is the cool thing. I was virtual before, pre-pandemic, being based in Edinburgh and a mum to twins. I've been working virtually since I launched my business. So which is cool, because I've now worked with leaders, across UK, Europe, Brazil, and different places, and kind of North America, Canada, Australia. I've even been doing some work for a pharma company and working with some leaders out in Japan. So it's pretty cool. Get to work with leaders everywhere.
Exciting as well. I think what we're going to speak about today is of real interest to a lot of our audience, and I'm excited to go through some of these topics. So obviously they resonate with us as an agency or a headhunting organisation, where we support C-suite level and above talent into organisations. So there's a lot of synergies here where we're able to cross over. So the topics that we're going to be discussing today are going to be the challenges that leaders are facing in these modern days, and given that we're all going through a current pandemic, there's lots of new additional challenges out there. What else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the role modelling and the importance of embodying that as a leader. The power of being an authentic leader, and then obviously the onboarding virtual world, which we've all been thrown into, which is again something that people have embraced. And I don't know about you, Jen, but when I worked at J&J and IQVIA, we were always trying to get people to look at talent remotely and ensure them that they can work from home. And it's taken a pandemic to actually prove that sorry, excuse me, that we're capable of doing that, and people are capable of doing that, but they do come with their own challenges, don't they?
Absolutely.
As you'll discuss. And then the last element I think we were going to discuss again is losing our identity and how to reconnect it within the virtual world, which again is very important. So I guess first off, what are the most common challenges leaders are facing today, and that you're witnessing and giving your broad network?
Do you know, I think, so I was coaching leaders, all through last year, through the pandemic, and there's some definite themes, arising, with leaders of all levels, and that was that there's just, this general overwhelm. I think the boundaries between work and life blurred. Interestingly, I did a survey looking at, whether leaders with this newfound, home working, and being able to pack away the suitcase and not traveling as much, whether they were spending that commute time, on themselves, on work only, or a healthy mix of the both. And it definitely came, the front runner was that the commute time was now filled with just more work.
I
so
appreciate that. I think we've discussed before, haven't we? Where are the boundaries? I mean, you get up, you go downstairs, you work, and if you've got a family, you're putting your family to bed, then you're tempted to go back and do more work. There's no downtime in your work life, home life balance there. So it's extremely difficult. I think there's an element of allowing yourself to do that as well. And almost feeling that you might be able to get a bit ahead of the curve, but you don't, because there's just more work coming in.
Definitely. We're never going to be able to achieve everything, like I don't know anyone who at the end of the day has crossed everything off their list. But absolutely, I think it is, we need to be quite strict with ourselves around boundaries, or have structure to make sure that then we've got a little bit of flex. But yeah, definitely, you know, as far as challenges, you know, leaders feeling overwhelmed, you know, especially in our industries, and also, you know, you know, working in pharma, biotech, clinical, life sciences, you know, tech. So all, you know, all the industries that I'm supporting, workload didn't decrease. You know, like actually, all the businesses I'm working with are busier than ever. And so leaders now are managing, you know, a virtual workforce. You know, so a lot of their people and teams were all moved virtually. So they were supporting, you know, people in, you know, hugely uncertain times, you know, the complexity of, you know, people working from home and everything that was going on with their teams and their people, you know, with all, you know, I mean, there was so much complexity and uncertainty. And, you know, as leaders, often it can be, you know, it can be a little bit lonely, or, you know, or isolating at times anyway, because, you know, often you're making decisions and you have that, you know, the responsibility for your people, but then throw in the fact that you're working from home, you know, that seems to have really well, actually definitely impacted leaders as far as how they're feeling in themselves. You know, so, you know, I'm hearing a lot from leaders that they are, you know, they've lost a little bit of, you know, their identity. They've maybe lost some confidence. They are overthinking more. So, I mean, I guess it makes sense, you know, if you've gone from having some human connection and interaction with your peers and your team, you know, and then you are in your home office, you know, and we end up spending a lot of time in our own heads, and depending on where you're at with work and life, that can be a positive place, but it can also not.
It could be the devil sometimes, can't it? It's the devil on your shoulder speaking to you in one ear, and it can be
and also, a leader recently who said that, you know, he's at his best when he is in and seeing the team, you know, and it's a lot of the kind of or maybe, you know, if things are going well, things are tough, you know, taking people out, you know, or just even having a coffee chats and, you know, being able to sort through challenges and problems, you know, bringing people together, and, you know, he just doesn't have that, you know. So it's, you know, and introverted people and extroverted as well, you know, everybody is really craving that human connection.
I agree. I think that it's definitely something that I miss. I'm very much a people person. I love to be around people. I love it. It's the creative side of it, and that ad hoc meetup and ad hoc conversations. And I know, speaking to the senior leaders that we're working with, they miss that as well. So, you know, you can tell if somebody in your team isn't as they should feel or are when you walk into an office and you're in their presence. But it's a little bit more difficult when we're stuck behind a Zoom call or a phone or a computer to make that connection. And I guess, again, what's the expectation of those teams and making that transition into that way of working and life? And I guess you've also got other distractions at home, as we all know. You and I both know we've got children, so when you're in lockdown and you've got no school or anything else, that could be additional stress and pressure as well. And that's something that not everybody has been used to. So you've got people with distractions, and you've got people that don't have distractions. And it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think that's, I definitely think that this is what people are definitely craving, human connection. And, you know, and I think it is just that often that perspective, you know, so even if things, so you've got curveballs coming at you as a leader and you've got different challenges, but actually just having that, you know, even catching up with a peer over a coffee or even in an airport and having a chat, sometimes it's that distraction from what's going on. And, you know, and not a distraction of, you know, of having to cook dinner for the kids, you know, it's actually like that other, you know, that support network. And actually I've been doing over probably the last 5-6 months, I've been doing work for a big pharma company and working with a lot of their leaders, you know, across the globe, you know, and we've been looking at setting them up for like an awesome 2021, looking at the power of visualization and looking at the power of storytelling and looking at, coming at 2021 from a real place of strength and sharing their stories with each other. And it's been so awesome and so powerful in those kind of small group scenarios. And the things that have jumped out as far as, leaders are saying that they love the fact being pulled out of the day-to-day, so that to connect with their peers, to share and hear the stories and the experiences that have shaped them, to then also just looking at 2020 and how they've all kind of found it and how they're actually feeling working from home and actually sharing it with each other, so that they actually feel that they're not alone in how they're feeling. And it has been really, really powerful. And it just shows what leaders are really needing and wanting these in these times.
Are you finding that you obviously the larger organisations and smaller organisations that you're working with at the moment are taking a different viewpoint in terms of managing, training, supporting, and the coaching and mentoring of their leadership team? Because obviously the pharmaceutical company that you're working with, they brought you in to support their leaders and help drive them forward. Whereas I guess when I was working from it, that didn't necessarily always happen. But with it all behind now in the pandemic, it's an additional added support, and organisations are thinking in a very different way about actually how can we support our leaders of today.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually think coaching couldn't be more important than in these current times. And actually, as I say, I see coaching as strategic headspace for leaders, pulling them out of the wild ride of 2020 and 2021, and actually it's kind of it helps them with that kind of strategic focus. But then also for me, as the sports coach, it absolutely is about on the health and well-being of the leader, making sure that they've got the energy and that they're showing up in the best possible way. So sometimes it is just looking at all that, the boundaries and how they use time and before they can actually focus on on some of the other stuff. And I think organizations are starting to realize that. So one of the tech companies I'm working with, they know their leaders they had a wild ride last year. It was just so heavy, and the fact that they're still standing as a leadership team is just incredible. So actually coaching was a gift to them to just say, look, we're so thank you for everything you've done, but here's something, almost a bit of a respite. It's a breath of fresh air. Coaching, I always think, is to actually put on, and so and that's really, really refreshing. I wouldn't say that all organizations are like that, because I think some organizations still quite old fashioned, and they see leadership coaching for executives or if people are maybe underperforming. But I think it can be a really cool tool. And definitely what leaders are saying right now is they don't want another training course, they don't just want to be on the, because actually they've got so much going on. But coaching and doing some of these group sessions, it's different because it's actually, it's looking at the leader as a whole, or looking at kind of helping to create those connections and with other leaders, which is cool.
So with the leaders that you've been working with, have you been working with them on the role modelling and the importance of embodying that as a leader?
Oh, do you know what? Role modelling is something, I know we spoke about it before, but it's just something that I feel so passionately about, and it is something that's come up more and more definitely over the last 12 months. Because it just comes up time and time again in conversations. And it's I guess we've all, if we look at we all have role models, and regardless of job title, even kids, your boys will have role models, I'm sure, and mine are too young right now, but well, I'm a role model. Even
definitely. I was just about to say they learn very quickly and very early. All of your bad habits.
I know. Well, Poppy's starting to sing like me, which is slightly concerning, and and Hamish is constantly saying "uh-oh," so But yeah, role modeling is something, it's so powerful. I mean, well, ultimately it is, it's behaving and showing up in a way that inspires people, inspires people around us to be better, to push boundaries, to behave positively, and being a role model is showing up in a way that other people want to, take inspiration for and imitate. And so I think, even I think in these current times, what I'm hearing from leaders at the moment is maybe they're feeling a bit flat, I mean, with everything that's gone on and the overwhelm and virtual working and everything, transactional Zoom, conversations, and the way things are going. And actually, they're also feeling, a lot of them are feeling are quite hard on themselves because they feel like they're not showing up in the best way. That they're tired and they've maybe just lost their mojo or lost the flow. So what I'm hearing from a lot of people is, I don't feel like I'm showing up right now in the best way possible as a leader. And this is why role modeling is coming up in conversations a lot, because it's quite a refreshing take on leadership. It's actually, what does it mean to be a role model? And and thinking of yourself as a role model, how do from where you are operating right and behaving right now and showing up to that place of, how do you want to be seen, and what does a role model mean to you, and what does embodying a role model look like, and looking at where the disconnect is and helping them get back to that point. It's really awesome to see.
Oh, good. I mean, in terms of the role modeling element and practice, is there a process that you go through with your leaders as to how they put this into practice? Are there certain pillars that they need to focus in and around in the role modeling?
Yeah, do you know, I think actually it's just, again, that creating the space for them to reflect on it, because time, this is some, who has time? That's what a lot of people are saying is, oh my goodness, all the things I would do if I had more time. But it's about making time for these important things, because time is our most precious resource, and it's how we use it. So sometimes it can feel a little bit counterproductive to set aside time to think about even something as, like being a role model, or how they're showing up, or who they are as a leader. But it's just so valuable. So what process do I do? Again, it's really getting at that self-reflection time, looking at the story that's shaped them, looking at them as an individual, and what are the experiences that have shaped them over the years. What are they most proud of, and what are the challenges they've overcome? And I love going through that reflecting backwards to come from a place of strength moving into the future, because I think we're all guilty of forgetting just how awesome and capable we are,
So, as I say, we're our own worst critics, aren't we? And we've had many discussions where we don't celebrate enough our achievements and what we're doing well. We generally tend to naturally look at our flaws, and especially in an environment where you're isolated, that can be heightened. And I think that's where, when you're able to speak to a career coach or somebody such as yourself, it really does open you up to thinking in a different way and achieving what you want to be achieving. And it's nice to have that guidance and reassurance as well.
Yeah, and so that's, so definitely, I think just actually taking time to reflect on all the good stuff, and even reflecting on 2020, because and I know I work with a lot of leaders who are kind of natural high achievers, or they're moving towards the next big thing, or they've got a million things on their to-do lists, and that focus on forward movement. But there's something so powerful about just taking the time to reflect, and even reflecting on 2020, and for a lot it was a challenging, heavy year, but actually how incredible just how so many leaders have supported their people, and what they have actually achieved given the environment. And so many leaders that I speak to haven't even just taken time to think about that. And it's so cool, because then they start to reflect on all that stuff, and it's just, again, that realization of just what they're capable of, and that motivation, and being an inspiration to themselves. And I think this is the cool thing about talking about role models, is that, well, I'll give you an example. Actually, a leader I was working with, she was in a global role with a pharma company, and we were talking about, what next? What does next level look like for her? And she hadn't really taken time to think about this because of the pandemic and supporting her team, and she's had a global remit and everything else. And so we started to look at, what does next level look like? Where does she go to? When she's having these kind of secret, kind of thoughts of, her career aspirations, where does it go? And she's like, all the way. I just want to go all the way, But she was like, at some stage she wanted to be, to move towards get a role within a small biotech as a CEO.
Yeah.
And so she was like, oh, it's just so exciting, that would be awesome. And then she does what so many of us do. It's like, oh, but actually puts all the blocks in place.
We talk ourselves out of it and try to persuade ourselves that we're not meant to be going that way. Yeah,
I know. And then so we went from that really exciting moment of her sort of starting to visualize herself in that role, to her being like, oh, I can't. And we started to talk about role models, and she was like, do you know what? I don't really have any for her, any female role models in my network who are CEOs of companies and who are not divorced, is what she said to me. So she was like, looking for role models, and role models who were in those positions, who were also had, CEO, who also had a life, who was still married and saw their children. She's like, I don't think it exists. And so we started to look at, okay, so the role model doing that, embodying that, doesn't exist, but actually, maybe you need to be that role model. And it was, and again, from that place, it was really cool, because she was like, yeah, actually, maybe I need to be the role model that I don't have. And again, that's kind of one of the first conversations I was really having with leaders around role modeling. And again, it's come up time and time again about, leaders, especially if we think about looking at diversity. I speak to a lot of leaders who are like, oh, there's no one who looks or acts like me. I don't necessarily have role models. And so again, it's about being the role model that maybe they never had. So that's one part of role modeling. But the other part is just we as leaders, we are role models, whether we know it, whether we like it or not. And so I think, and for some people that's quite a positive, exciting thing. For some people it can feel a bit uncomfortable, but there's maybe an opportunity for growth and change there. But I do think that's part of being a leader, is just embracing that inner role model, and it can really have such a positive impact on how a leader shows up, how a leader behaves, in a really positive way. So that's something I'm definitely speaking to lots of people at the moment, and it certainly won't be the end of it.
Yeah, of course, I can imagine. We touched briefly when we were talking about the topics about the power of an authentic leader. So what's your view and opinion around authentic leadership?
Yeah, again, it kind of goes hand in hand with role modeling and how we show up as a leader. But again, authentic leadership is something that I cover all the time with leaders, is just as far as, who are you as a leader? Just basic, that very simple question. I would say, majority of leaders I ask that of are like, oh, I haven't really spent much time thinking about that. And especially, I work a lot with leaders who are transitioning into new leadership roles. So that's an evolving, and it's evolving. Who they are as leaders is often evolving. So it's always important to keep coming back to that. But yeah, authentic leadership. I again, working with leaders in these days, and leaders are feeling quite overwhelmed, and they're feeling maybe they've lost their identity working virtually, I think it's a really important topic to come back to just to reconnect with who you are. What are your personal values? What are your strengths? How do you want to show up for people? How do you want people to see you? What is needed of you? So I think that whole topic, it's really important. But also it's cool because if you've lost your mojo as a leader, or you may be feeling a bit flat, it's a really cool process to go through and to explore, and to really just ground you, and ground you in who you are and your strengths and all that awesome stuff. And then, but also to kind of motivate you to, and to inspire you. And it's just, well, on the flip side, when you're not operating from a place, of authenticity and who you are, it feels pretty crap, really, doesn't it?
I feel like we've had these conversations again and again, haven't we? But it's good to go back and reevaluate and reassess and get that alignment back almost, and that direction and the positivity and motivation. Confidence. I think it's the confidence element as well, isn't it?
But and this is the thing, is sometimes people say, don't feel confident enough to just kind of be myself as a leader. And that's a really interesting thing, because actually it's trying to be someone else, which is actually having a negative impact on confidence. So it's actually showing up as who you are, and then and just getting in that groove and the flow, and just of being being who you want to be as a leader. And it feels good. And interestingly, one of the leaders I was working with from the start of the year, she just started in a new pharma company, in a global role. And one of the questions when we very first started to work together was just like, how much of myself do I bring to my new role? Because, again, she was kind of onboarding virtually. Her team, she hadn't met most of her team, because actually I think even the recruitment process was virtual. She was just like,
it's something that we're seeing quite a lot of, and it's very difficult, because the first few months of any new role or opportunity is pivotal for them. Building their personal PR, their branding, their credibility within their team, and being shut away and isolated. Some companies that we've worked with have done an extremely good job, but I do think that there's still a gap in terms of, especially for senior leaders coming into a business, of having maybe a third party, or being able to go and speak to somebody confidently for some guidance in terms of making that transition over to a new organisation. And because the onboarding piece isn't necessarily there from a face-to-face element, it can be even more difficult. So I guess, it's, and I know that you've been working with people, haven't you, in terms of the onboarding virtually piece. What is it that you've been doing with them?
So onboarding leaders is just like, I love it. I would, it's something I pretty much, I do it day in, day out. And actually interesting, even to give you some context, when I left Quintiles to set up my coaching business, that first year, I just I took lots of different coaching gigs and just explored supporting leaders in different scenarios. And I thought at the end of that 12 months, I'm just going to see if I want to maybe specialize, or if I want to develop something, something bespoke, or how that looks. And it was really interesting, because over that first 12 months, the number one group of leaders that were coming to me for support were leaders who were just starting new leadership roles, and were feeling, excited, but also quite overwhelmed. That kind of the anxiety of, have I bitten off more than I can chew? Can I do this? Oh my goodness, all the deep-rooted fears that come to the surface during big change. And so that was just like, that jumped out to me like in a big way that first year in my business. And the more I explored it, it was really, really interesting, because I was like, why are leaders coming to me and paying out of their own pocket? And that's cool. It's great. It was awesome to be able to support them. But I was like, from having my corporate, my organizational hat on, I was like, what are organizations not doing? Why, and it was really interesting because, taking a closer look at onboarding leaders, it's not done very well. There's a massive assumption that if you are a leader joining a new organization or even being promoted internally, that you're a leader, you'll just get on with it, you'll know what you're doing.
100%. We see it all the time. And there's part of our service is to continuously check in with our senior leaders that we're putting into organizations, and often or not, we're having the same conversations with them.
Definitely.
And it's so important at the first hurdle to get that right, because it sets the scene for the rest of their journey with the company. And
absolutely. And there's some crazy statistics, something like, almost up to 40% of leaders, joining a new organization in a leadership role will fail, leave, or burn out within 18 months. And well, for you, and for me, with my old recruiter hat on, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's like, falling off the chair type stats, but from organization perspective, that's just wild. It's costly for all involved.
And exactly. We know the cost of a hire into an organization, and if it's not successful, it can be detrimental to not just the team, the organization, and the company evolving. So it's so important to get it right.
It's good people. Again, I think there's a few kind of myths around, if a leader doesn't work out in the first months, that it's down to the leader. But I've seen so many awesome leaders like burn out super quickly, and often it's the high achieving perfectionist leaders who will go in and they'll put so much pressure on themselves that they'll just go in all guns blazing. They're just like go, and they'll be burnt out, and really, really quickly. So it's good people that are so I don't know if whoever's listening at the moment, if you are about to embark on a new leadership transition and you're having all these these anxieties and thoughts, you are not alone. But absolutely, make sure just cut yourself some slack and build a bit of a plan and get some support, because it's so beneficial.
I think you raise a good point there as well, because I do think people feel that they are on their own when they're having those thought processes, and the expectation of them is something that they're just experiencing themselves. But as you know, Jen, and as I know, we hear this story continuously. And it amazes me that companies haven't got it right still.
Definitely. And actually, it's interesting because I'm working with a global head of respiratory a few years ago, and this was her last role before she was going to retire. And she was like, oh my goodness, I wish I had worked with you earlier in my career, because it would have I would have had less sleepless nights. But I think that's it. I think around onboarding and transitioning into new leadership roles, I think it's even just taking a step back to look at human behavior and our own psychology, and going through big, bold, significant change. All humans, all of us, have these thoughts. It's all our deep-rooted fears and our kind of those historical limiting beliefs come to the surface during those times, because our minds are throwing everything at us to kind of keep us safe. So it then throws everything at us as far as kind of overthinking, the doubt, the fears, the worries. Add in virtual working and virtual onboarding, and it's just an uncomfortable place. Makes things a lot harder for leaders starting new roles, when it actually doesn't have to be like that. Actually, starting a new leadership role can be a really empowering, awesome experience if you approach it in the right way.
Yeah, indeed. Or mentioned previously was around losing our identity and how to reconnect with it in a virtual world. What's your viewpoint in and around that topic itself, and advice to individuals out there?
Yeah, so again, this is something that's coming up all the time. Is just again, being operating from home, and with everything that's going on, people have just feel that they've just lost a sense of who they are, so and especially the leaders that I'm working with, and it's just how to get back to that, because it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't feel very good, but often people feel like they don't even have time to address it, or what do they even do to get back on track. So if you're feeling like, again, you kind of gone off piste, and you've lost that sense of self, and maybe feeling like you're not showing up as the leader that you want to be, it's absolutely, take some time, like make time, prioritize time for you, in your diary, in your calendar, and block it and protect it, and to even just to reflect on that, to even look at, reflecting on, again, who are you as a person? What are your personal values? What are your strengths? Are you leveraging your strengths right now? Are you living your personal values? Are you still learning and challenging yourself? And, are you approaching things with that kind of growth mindset? Because sometimes we feel like we're just in survival, reactive mode, that we're not doing, when we're not actually doing that kind of, we're not growing, and that can feel, that stagnation can often be impacting our confidence, as well. But I think it's just coming back to that, who do I want to be as a leader? Who do I need to be as a leader? How do I want other people to see us? What does being a role model mean? And then look at where you are right now, and then look at, where's the disconnect, that gap analysis, and actually what can you do to get back on track? Because when you are operating from that kind of that authentic place, or just showing up in the best way possible, if you are embodying that role model, it feels good. It feels good. It's less exhausting. It's less overwhelming. That kind of self-doubt and and crisis of confidence, that it doesn't come up, and it's actually just instead of like looking externally, you're starting to have that really empowered, you are being that role model that you're looking for, and it really just does definitely help people to be inspired to make that conscious effort to drive positive change and how they show up. So it's first of all, make time, and reflect on it, and look at it, because actually, the cool thing I've seen is that when people are comfortable and confident in who they are, and they are showing up as that person, and then they're also in the right environment, so quite an inclusive environment that that allows people to show up as they are, it's just incredible, like the impact that has, like leaders just on fire, and actually, it's amazing, just the positive impact that can have on people around them. So not just on the leader, but on all the people around them. It's just awesome. And that can just come from the leader starting with that self-reflection on themselves.
And in terms of your leaders that you've been supporting and continue to support, do they then deliver and support their own teams in the same way? So obviously able to utilize what you're able to help them with to then scale it down to the rest of their team.
Yeah, and this is what I love, because I wrote the other day, I was like, when I talk about role models and authentic leadership, I would love it to be like a movement. It sounds so dramatic. I mean, but I must have been in a dramatic mood. I was like, I want to start a movement, or I want, or to inspire, to work with leaders and inspire them, so that then they inspire the other people around them and empower other people around them. And it's really awesome because, a few of my leaders recently, they were like, when we explored who they are as leaders, they then sat down with their leadership team, so their leaders in their team, and started to have those conversations. And they said it was so awesome. Again, it wasn't easy actually, for them, speaking to their leaders about who they are, and how they're showing up, etc. That some of them found it really difficult, but they said it was awesome. It just really sparked really cool conversations, and really helped them to better understand each other, how they can support each other, where there's maybe some learning gaps, etc. But just also how to best work with each other. So again, I hope by working with my leaders that then they pass it on, and that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, indeed. I guess that's what you would hope to see, isn't it? In terms of leaders leading leaders, and so on.
Yeah.
Obviously, being an authentic leader empowers both the leader and their team, and we've just touched on obviously one of those elements. Are there other areas that they're able to help with?
I think, again, being quite, when we're showing up as ourselves, it can feel quite vulnerable. That you do, it is a bold thing sometimes, sometimes, but people have definitely said, it's a vulnerable experience, being quite visible and showing up as yourself can sometimes, there's a little bit of discomfort getting comfortable in that. But the cool, awesome thing is that with that discomfort and with that vulnerability, that builds trust. And people forget that actually, leaders who show that vulnerability, which is so important in these, in current times, it installs huge trust with people. And then with trust, then that feeds, that culture of trust then feeds into real openness, and then from openness you've got people having really cool conversations, and you're able to kind of really know your people and know how you can support them, and and I think there's just starting again from that leader doing their own work. There's just how the momentum and the impact that can have on people around is just so cool.
Of course. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today, but I wanted to say a huge thank you. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I know that our audience will be completely immersed into the podcast and wanting to know more. So, from my perspective, if anybody's got any questions for Jenn, then please do reach out to her and have those conversations. Anybody looking for senior talent, then reach out to me and come and have a conversation. But in actual fact, Jenn, you did mention that you're putting together a leadership program as well. So I don't know if you want to give the audience just a little bit of insight into what that might look like.
A wee teaser. Well, I guess, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lovely conversation and allowing me to talk about topics that I'm so passionate about. But definitely for the audience, if I would really love to hear from you. If anything's resonated, please connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me an email, get in touch. Just let me know what kind of takeaways you had from the podcast and your own experience. I'd just really love to hear from you. And just as a wee bit of a teaser, I've been working on something just from the feedback that I've been getting from people of doing a group leadership program, which will be virtual and kicking off, I think, towards the end of May. And it's going to be called Role Models, which is really exciting. And ultimately, I'm looking at as a bit of a hangover cure for leaders who have been left a bit flat and uninspired by 2020, who want to shake it off, step things up, rediscover who they are as a leader and how they show up. And really, we're going to look at, embracing inner role model, look at, the power of storytelling and developing a feel-good personal brand. We're going to explore thought leadership and visibility and how they show up, set ambitious next level goals. There'll be a support crew with other leaders, a community that we can learn from and challenge each other. And then really it's going to be about looking at, achieving awesome stuff, but making sure it's sustainable. So there'll definitely be health, wellbeing focused as well. It's all going to be pretty cool. So just as a wee teaser, if that sounds interesting, intriguing to any of you, please reach out again and we can have a combo.
I'm excited to see and hear all about it. As Jenn mentioned, I think this series is for our audience and it's dedicated to helping our leaders in our industry. So anybody wanting to know a little bit more about a certain topic, understand a little bit more, please do get in contact with us and let us know your thoughts and any topics that you'd like us to do a podcast on going forward. But thank you very, very much, and I really do appreciate your time.
Awesome.
It's been great, and hopefully we'll be able to have a wine at some point.
Oh my goodness.
Zoom
Yes.
call.
I know. Oh my goodness. I know. Although after Easter, I think I've probably had too much. Enough to last me for a few months. Oh, thanks, Lissa.
Fabulous. Thank you.